In the last few years, we've seen a lot of American consumers shift their focus from the mid-size family sedan to the compact crossover. Now that has caused auto manufacturers to kind of change their ways of designing these things. They're making them a little bit sportier, a little bit sleeker, a little bit more fun to drive. In this Redline comparison test, I'm going to go over two Japanese family sedans, one being the best-selling Toyota Camry, the other being the more underdog Mazda6. So which one deserves your hard-earned dollars? Let's take a look and find out. So exterior styling was not something that mid-size family sedan shoppers really cared about in the past. That's definitely changed over the years. You can see if you look at this current Camry, Toyota's made the design extremely bold. They gave it the Lexus spindle grille, especially when they refreshed it back in 2015. Now this particular one is the XSE model. It gives you that big grille, it gives you darkened headlights, LED daytime running lights, and if you get a V6 model, you get LED headlights. Now overall, I think the design looks definitely aggressive, maybe a little too, like it's trying a little too much, but it definitely is a lot more interesting versus the somewhat vanilla and boring Camrys of the past. Now, my tester has these standard 18-inch wheels. You'll get them on the 4-cylinder and the V6. They fill out the wheel wells nicely. I like the darkened machine look with the black inner spokes or the gray inner spokes. I think it's a really good looking wheel. The overall profile of the Camry definitely hasn't changed over the years. It's still instantly recognizable as a Camry. Toyota basically said when they redesigned this in 2015, or they refreshed it, they changed every panel except the roof. It definitely has aged well, a little bit on the vanilla side when you look at the profile. Now, stepping at the rear of the Camry, this is where Toyota made some pretty big changes in 2015. The taillights got a more attractive design. They're not LED taillights, unfortunately, but they do look much more cohesive looking versus the slightly weird looks of the 2012 to 2014 Camrys. The XSE model also gives you this subtle integrated rear lip spoiler, and you'll get dual exhaust tips if you go for the V6, a single chrome exhaust tip if you go for a 4-cylinder like my tester. Now in the family sedan segment, the 6 has definitely always been the style leader, and this current one is certainly no exception. You can see the Mazda Kodo design theme works extremely well in this car, and it was introduced back in 2014. Mazda gave it a slight freshening last year with subtle updates again this year. You can see my tester, being the GT, has full LED headlights, LED fog lights, a really nice 5-point grille with this chrome slat that kind of integrates into the headlight. And if you guys go for this top trim model, you'll have an LED light that kind of accents the grille, which definitely looks very stunning at night. Now, looking at the rest of the profile of this car, I think it looks extremely nice. It has the lines of a European sports sedan, which makes it feel like it's a class above the Camry, the Accord, the Altima, for example. My tester has these really attractive dark finish 19-inch wheels, an inch bigger than the Camry. You can get 19s, I believe, on the Honda Accord, so it's not the only family sedan you can get with 19-inch wheels. And you can see here, looking at the rest of the profile, it's a lot more interesting versus the very slab-sided vanilla lines of the Camry. Some may say it's a little too much, maybe it won't age as well. I disagree. I think this is one of the best looking family sedans on the market. Now, if you want to follow me over to the rear of this car, the design also has similar lines to the front, really attractive, dual chrome exhaust tips on every model, even though Mazda only offers this with one engine. And I really love the LED taillights with this, slim, attractive design. Really nice, subtle rear lip spoiler and a little chrome thing that goes along the trunk lid. And overall, I think this is definitely the better looking vehicle. Of course, looks are subjective. Some may think the Camry looks better, but I think Mazda has done a good job with keeping the design of the 6 very fresh throughout the years. Now, underneath the hood, family sedans typically are not known for being exciting, and these two really are no exception. These are the base powertrains, the one that probably 80 to 90% of you buy. The Camry has a 2.5-liter 4-cylinder with variable valve timing. No direct injection, though. It makes pretty humble numbers, 178 horsepower and 170 pound-feet of torque. It's paired to a 6-speed automatic, front-wheel drive only. This car is rated to get about 24 in the city and 33 on the highway, on regular gas at least. Now, if you want to follow me over to the Mazda, Mazda also has a 2.5-liter 4-cylinder engine. This is part of their new Skyactiv engine family. It's a completely Mazda design engine. It doesn't share a thing with Ford. In this car, it does have direct injection. Because it's a Skyactiv engine, it has a high compression ratio, a special header to aid with emissions and performance. This car makes more power, 184 horsepower and 185 pound-feet of torque, also going through a 6-speed automatic transmission. And the Mazda is more efficient. It's rated at 27 in the city and 35 on the highway, on regular gas, of course, front-wheel drive only. Both these sedans weigh roughly around 3,300 pounds. You're going to have very similar performance when you get out on the road. Now the interior is obviously where you're going to spend most of your time in these vehicles, and this is where the Camry definitely will please a lot of shoppers who want to keep things really simple and prefer an open and airy environment. My particular one doesn't have the push button start, so you have this key that comes from like a 2004 Corolla or something like that. So unfortunately you have to stick the key in the ignition. I know it's such a pain in the butt, but you can get push button start if you guys get a convenience package. My Tester just doesn't have it, unfortunately. Now, looking at the rest of the entire interior design, it definitely is very simple in here, and it's definitely aged. Toyota has a completely redesigned Camry that's coming later this year. You have this kind of faux stitching with the soft materials. There's some silver painted plastic, and Toyota did update the interior nicely in 2015. It just doesn't feel quite as, you know, luxurious and premium as the Mazda, but I do appreciate a couple things in here. I like the suede Alcantara you get on this XSE trim, especially on the seats and on the dash. It's soft touch right here. You have one touch up-down windows for both the front, but not the rear. And the steering wheel, it is leather wrapped, but the leather doesn't feel all that nice to me. It kind of has like a rough stitch to it. Definitely not as nice as in the Mazda. You get the traditional gear lever here with this, you know, the stick that kind of, you have to go to the side here. It's very old school. It just reminds you of an older car. Put the vehicle in reverse, you have a backup camera that's standard on every Camry. It's nothing really fancy. The Mazda doesn't really do any better. And this, of course, is the Toyota Entune head unit. It works pretty well. It has the, you know, the usual apps you can get here. If you download the app on your phone, you can put the Pandora, the Spotify, the streaming stuff if you want. There is no Android Auto and CarPlay. None of those vehicles offer it, but you do have the navigation function from the app if you guys want to add nav. This one doesn't have the in-car factory nav. And then this XSE model has the 10-speaker premium sound system. It's not the JBL audio if you guys go for like a tech package, if you guys decide to go for that. At least you do get heated seats right here. And overall, it's not a bad interior design. You kind of get into this car and you know exactly how to use everything, which is definitely nice. The Mazda definitely takes a little bit of getting used to, and it doesn't feel quite as spacious because of the overall design of the cabin. Now, the rear seat of a family sedan is definitely an important consideration for a lot of buyers out there, and the Camry's rear seat doesn't disappoint. This is one of the roomier cars in the segment. You can see here, the passenger seat here was pretty much pushed all the way back for a 6-foot person, and there's really good space. There's lots of foot space, there's good leg room, there's a nearly flat floor here, and Toyota kind of gave you some good features. There's vents back here, there's map pockets, there's good storage. Now, the door panel materials are hard touch plastic compared to the front, but you do have more of that suede Alcantara. There is a nice little folding armrest here with cup holders, and the seats themselves, they do fold down 60/40. Now, the trunk space in a Camry is also pretty cost competitive. You can see you do have hinges that crush your cargo, but it's got a huge opening. You're looking at around 15 cubic feet of space with lots of room in here. And if you look underneath here, you will find a temporary spare tire, so Toyota is not going to make you deal with a fix-a-flat kit. Now, stepping inside the interior of the Mazda after the Camry, and you really feel like you're in a BMW and Audi. This feels like a class above. It's very luxury car-like in here. Now, my Tester being the top-of-the-line model, it has the company's smart key access system with push-button start. The button's a little too high for my taste, but put your foot on the brake, it starts right up. Now, one thing I'm noticing immediately, the engine is a lot louder in the Mazda. You hear it a lot more. It makes its presence known versus the Camry, which is a lot more quieter. Some of you may like that, some of you may not. Looking at the rest of this interior, though, I'm pretty much blown away. I mean, check out the steering wheel. It's a new steering wheel this year. Really nice stitching. It reminds you of a luxury car. The materials in here are super nice, fancy. You have this real leather stitching on the dash, on the upper instrument panel lid. It's soft touch right there on the upper panels of the door. And down here is also a really nice area in terms of design. Really like the Mazda command control knob with the volume knob here. It's also a touch screen here if you guys prefer to use that. There's a traditional shifter here with your, PRND, a manual shift mode, paddle shifters just like the Camry. And when you put the vehicle in reverse, you also get a backup camera. Pretty standard size backup camera as well. It's not really super fancy in terms of the views and stuff here. What you do also get is an electronic parking brake. The Camry kind of had a more traditional foot brake. And the Mazda's interior definitely, while it looks a lot more fancy, it has lots of clever storage cubbies and whatnot, it's not quite as roomy feeling as the Camrys. You feel like it's a more cramped interior, which is definitely, it could be a deal breaker for some of you, but I find the seats to be a little bit more comfortable. The seats also have a nice, more upscale look to them, and you have one-touch windows for all four, which definitely one-ups the Camry. Same soft materials on the door panels, stitching and whatnot, and it's overall just a really nice place to spend time. Just be aware that this car does feel a little bit more cramped versus the Toyota. Now, the rear seat of the Mazda 6 also has a more cramped approach, just like the front versus the Toyota. I mean, you get back here, it's not awful by any means, but you're gonna notice that it's not quite as airy feeling as the Camry. One thing I'm noticing immediately is the floor is not as flat, so you have that little hump. You're not gonna be able to put three people in here as easily. Now, the materials in here are also nice. You have, soft leather here on the door panels. This is even soft touch, where the Toyota, they kind of cut corners in the rear seat. You have vents back here, just like the Toyota, and dual map pockets. Now, the Mazda goes a step further. It has heated rear seats. That's a new feature this year. You can't get that on the Toyota at any price. They may change that on the redesigned Camry. And overall, I think the rear seats do feel a little bit more comfortable to me. There's a little bit better extension here for your thighs. It's a little bit more supportive. And it also still has the same versatility. The seats fold down in a 60/40 manner. Now, because the Mazda has smart key access, there's a button here that you can push to open the trunk, which the Toyota didn't have. You'll get that if you get the push button start. The trunk of the Mazda is also a little bit smaller than the Camry. It's not bad by any means. They do put this little cutout here so the hinges won't crush your cargo. It definitely is not quite as low in terms of the floor height, so it is a little bit narrow feeling. I believe this is like 14.5 cubic feet. So again, it's pretty similar. Now, looking underneath the cargo area here, Mazda also gives you a temporary spare tire, so you don't have to deal with the fix-a-flat kit like some competitors. All right, so first setting foot in the 2017 Camry, I have to say the Camry drives just like a Camry. In fact, a lot of you who used to own a Camry will literally get into this car and feel like it drives just like my old Camry. The 4-cylinder engine is smooth, it goes about its business without much fuss, it's quiet, the steering is numb and lacks feel, and when you really start to push it, you'll hear the understeer, even though this is the front-wheel drive car, but you'll feel the understeer. This car does not like being pushed. It's not a sporty car. Even though Toyota markets this as a sporty Camry, the Mazda 6 far exceeds this. It literally feels like a sports sedan. It's like night and day difference. Now, what the Camry does excel in is the relaxed driving manner. I mean, just driving down the road, the ride is a lot softer than the Mazda's. It's quieter in here, the engine's quieter, there's less road noise. The seats don't hug you as much. They are wider, but I find that the Mazda seats are more comfortable for me. Of course, it suits my frame more. You need to make sure that you try the cars out to decide, which car actually fits your driving style more. The Camry's visibility is also slightly better in here. It's got bigger mirrors, it's got bigger windows, less of that sacrifice it's making because the styling isn't quite as plush or as good looking as the Mazda's, which again, maybe what you're looking for. It's also an area where I noticed in the interior the Camry is far roomier feeling than the Mazda, where the Mazda could feel a little bit cramped. But to be honest, it really depends on what your style is, what your taste is. Both sedans excel as family sedans, but the Camry is just a little bit easier to live with on a day-to-day basis. Another thing I am noticing, they both have 2.5-liter 4-cylinder engines. However, the Camry's feels a little bit peppier. I'm not entirely sure why. It may just be the programming of the transmission, but when I go around corners and I floor the Camry, it feels a little bit quicker than the Mazda. I mean, I'd be curious to line these two up in a drag race. Ultimately, you don't buy these sedans to go for a drag racing. You're just going to use it and just daily it. But they both accelerate fine. For most of you, you're not going to be wanting for power, except for the most power hungry like myself. You may want a V6, which is where the Toyota has an advantage. It offers that 3.5-liter V6. Mazda, unfortunately, doesn't give you that option. But the Camry is still a very pleasant driving car. Let's hop into the Mazda and see how it differs compared to the Toyota. Now, after just driving the 2017 Camry, I have to say stepping into this Mazda 6 is definitely a night and day experience, which is interesting because both sedans have the same mission, to be a family sedan. However, Mazda definitely takes a much more sportier route. Now, the Camry that I drove is the XSE trim. It is Toyota's version of a sporty Camry, and I have to say, Toyota doesn't know how to do sport the way Mazda does. Everything about this car feels more sporty, from the steering response to the chassis control to the engine response to the noises this thing makes. I mean, put it into its sport mode here, into its manual mode. Let's go around this corner here. The paddles work much better in this car. The transmission, just way more responses. When I blip the throttle, it actually rev matches on your downshifts. And then put your foot down here. It just sounds so much better. The engine in this car is so much louder than the Camry's. The steering is so much more alive. It talks to you way more. And the steering response, the handling of this car is just in another class of its own. Toyota really needs to drive a 6 to be able to, tune a Camry to be sporty. I haven't driven the new Camry, of course, but I have to say the Mazda has the Camry beat in the sporty department.
Now, of course, with this sport, theme here, you're gonna pay some kind of price for this, and the Mazda definitely feels what I would say, firmer. Some of you may confuse it for harsh. Most buyers in this class aren't looking for a sports sedan. That's not really why you bought this car, and that's where the Camry excels. The Mazda is a little bit firmer. It's a little bit noisier. The interior is not as spacious as the Camry. So if you're looking for a more relaxed drive, you're going to want to grab the keys for the Toyota. The Mazda can be a little bit high-strung at times. It kind of urges you to drive more aggressively, to push the car, to take corners faster, which is what I like. So again, it's going to come down to your personal opinion. This car definitely has more road noise. It definitely has more engine noise. You're going to feel the bumps in the road because of the 19-inch wheels. Toyota's just done a better job with the tuning versus Mazda. So in terms of an easier car to live with as a daily driver, the Mazda is not bad, but you're going to notice the differences with the Camry when you drive the two cars back to back. The seats I also find to be much more comfortable in the Mazda. I mean, in terms of the interior, there's no contest. The Mazda has a much more upscale premium interior versus the Toyota. My tester for the Camry, of course, is missing like $3,700 worth of options to bring it up to the equipment levels of this car. However, you're not going to be able to pick up a Camry at any price that has this level of attention to detail with the interior furnishings in this car, especially when you look at the seats, the leather quality, just the overall design of this interior. It just looks and feels more like a European luxury car.
So with the growing popularity of SUVs, family sedans have still been relatively strong in terms of sales. Toyota moved roughly 388,000 Camrys last year, while Mazda, they only did around 50 to 60,000 6s. So you're probably wondering, why is there such a huge discrepancy? Well, after driving both cars back to back, you can see exactly why a lot of buyers keep choosing the Camry. It's a much easier car to live with. The engine's quieter, it rides better, it has got less road noise in the Mazda, and the interior is far more spacious, which is definitely what buyers in the segment are looking for. Now, in relation to the Mazda is definitely more sporty, it's more luxurious, it's a little bit more of a frantic car. It kind of reminds you that you're driving something a little bit sportier, which is not necessarily what buyers in this segment want. Now, you're probably wondering, which one would I choose? Which one would I give my hard-earned money to if I was going to buy a vehicle like this? And for me, I would have to choose the Mazda. It's the sportier car, it's different, it's got an interior that is far more luxurious, and that's just simply what appeals to me. However, if that's not your style, the Camry is probably going to be the better choice. But in conclusion, of this Redline comparison test, I'm going to personally pick the Mazda6, but there's also plenty of reasons to choose the Camry. And just keep in mind that Toyota has a new Camry that's literally a few months away, which I'll be showing and driving you guys later this year. But until that, if you guys are also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, make sure you follow me on Instagram at redline_reviews, like us on Facebook, and if you haven't done so, please subscribe to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I'll catch you all in the next video.